What's up, everybody? Hey guys, it is Tyler with Hooksets Are Free. It's about 9:10 my time here, Mountain Standard Time. 2 hours later, a little after 11 o'clock p.m. on Saturday night, January 29th. So, hope you guys are doing well. If you're watching this on the replay, otherwise, I'm going to give people just a couple minutes to hop in here and join live to have a little chat about fishing on this lovely Saturday night. Hope everybody's doing well. I know that there is a crazy snowstorm on the East Coast. So I don't know if Matt or Ron, other people have been getting hit by that today or not. But what's up, Matt? How you doing tonight? Has the snowstorm hit you, and how bad has it been? Daniel T in the house. What's up, my man? How are you? And I apologize if you guys can hear a clicking sound to my left. Your guys is right. Throughout this stream, if there's any silence, you might end up hearing that clicking. My alarm system here at the house went berserk last night in the middle of the night, and woke all my kids up, everything like that. So I had to cut the cord, and now I'm getting some weird clicking sounds, and I don't know what's going on. But please excuse that if you do hear it. Otherwise, I want to show you guys what looks to be probably the final product of this bait right here. I'm working on a couple more at the moment, but this is essentially what this guy finished up as. I've got a black back, but I've got the sparkle all throughout the bait. And then I've gone to like a light purple sheen on the bottom. And as you can see, it's a flat-sided bait. I've painted these eyes on here, so of course they're not perfect. Got a little shad dot on there, and that is about it. So pretty decent looking first crankbait that I've ever made, but I have no idea how it's going to perform. So we shall see. I was hoping to have Epic Eric on tonight's live stream after seeing him on Debo, but was just super last minute in trying to recruit him to hop on with me. So anyway, hopefully sometime in the future we'll be able to get him on and get to know him a little bit better. And I think we've actually got a fair amount in common, him and I. So anyway, 7 people in here already. Hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already. Hope you guys are all having a great Saturday night. We're pretty much just going to have a random chat. We've got Bassless Chap in the house tonight. And Ron says it's butt high to a tail Indian. I'm not quite sure what that means, but how much snow do you have, sir? I did just finally get Ron's package out a week before last, as well as Debo. I'm doing a little trade with him. I have not received his package just yet, but as soon as I get it, I will show you guys that bait. It is one that Matt has tested out for him in the past prior to him painting and selling these, and it is the Tiny Clash knockoff blank that he is custom painting. So yeah, Daniel says the storm hit us, but it's not been bad. Okay. And Matt says snow stopped earlier this morning, got about 7 inches, not too bad, just really cold, 17 degrees. Now that's not that cold, but 7 inches of snow is pretty substantial, man. I am Groot says always cut the blue wire. Yeah, I've got a box right there, and I was looking at it before starting the stream, and I didn't know which wire to cut inside that box. But where the alarm was going off last night, it was so loud, and of course my head was right up to it. That had never gone off before, so I literally took some wire snippers and just cut those bad boys as close to the actual deal as I could, so that if need be, I can rewire that pretty easily. But I didn't realize until just now that there's a clicking sound going on, so I apologize for that if you guys hear that at all tonight. So Matt says the lip looks good. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, not too bad considering I cut this by hand and sanded it down. It's not perfect. Nothing about this bait is perfect because it was all handmade, and it's my very first one. So in terms of the hook hangers being in line with each other, I think it's decent. But I did carve and sand this bait by hand. I don't have a band saw or a belt sander or anything like that. So literally everything was by hand, including the paint job. And I do not have an airbrush at this time. So everything was with markers or nail polish. And then I just used a polyurethane for the top coat. So we'll see. I haven't had a chance to put split rings or hooks on it, so I don't know the exact weight of what this thing will be when all is said and done, or even if it will run true. So I will have to play around with that a little bit because I do just have some weight right in the center of the belly behind that middle hook hanger. So I don't know. I'm just kind of fiddling around with making my own baits for the very first time, just to kill some time in the off season. But such is life. Lucido Mafia, how you doing, man? Dark Sleeper is a must. Yeah, I put that in the thumbnail because it has been asked to me multiple times whether this bait is a must or bust, given its price tag and how it compares to other baits. You know, uh, Literally, this is a hybrid style bait between, say, a swim bait and a jig, and and it's pricier than either one when you think about what you're comparing it to. But I do think it's realism, it's action, it's weighting, everything is really well made with this bait. The only issue is the fact that it does snag up fairly frequently. So I feel mixed, right in between. I would say that this is somewhat properly rated, um, and even properly priced. So some people might say it's overrated if all they're doing is fishing from the bank and they've just had bad luck in fishing it low and slow on the bottom and are getting hung up all the time. Some people who fish from a boat or are mixing up their retrieves, are staying on top of fish, are probably having tremendous success on it and would say it's an absolute must. So I feel mixed about it myself because I've had mixed results with it. I've lost a handful of them, and I've also had good success on them. So um, it is what it is. But I appreciate the comment and your opinion as well. Bruce Nichols in the house. What's up, man? Adam Odin. Yo yo. Ron says couple of feet for sure. Holy hot damn, that's a lot of snow. Ron is way up north in Rhode Island, so it's possible that they got hit the hardest way up north. But that's pretty wild. As of 2 p.m., they had gotten 18 inches. So that's pretty substantial. That's a lot of shoveling to do, man. Michael Romero says, cheers, Tyler. What are you drinking tonight? Epic Eric knows for sure. Do you do any trout fishing as of late? I have not done a lot of trout fishing. I've done some skiing. I finally, paid for my pass, if you will. I've gotten 5 or 6 days on the mountain, but just have not done any trout fishing in the last month or so. So I do need to scratch that itch and get up to uh, the mountains where I do a fair amount of fly fishing, and I was very close to doing so while I was up skiing recently, and just was kind of on dad duty. We were up for a very short weekend trip, and I didn't quite have the opportunity to sneak away for an hour or two and hit the creek behind our house. So, uh, nope, not just yet. But I appreciate you asking, man. I'm itching for any and all types of fishing. That is for sure. And by the way, I am drinking what has been more or less my go-to for a while now, and that is the Evan Williams Bottled in Bond. I've talked about it before. Maybe you would have been here and would recall, but it is arguably one of the better bang for the buck bourbons on the market these days if you can find it. It has the white label. It is a 100 proof bourbon, and I don't know exactly how long it's aged, but it is really good. It's 17.99, 18.99, depending on where you get it, and it drinks really well. So I used to be the type of guy who had the mindset that you really needed to spend 30 to $40 on a 750 milliliter bottle of bourbon in order to get some decent quality. Um, and I don't necessarily think that's always true anymore. So yeah, this Evan Williams bottled and bond has been kind of the deal for me as just a go-to cheap bourbon. If I don't have much of any stock, or I've only got stuff that I'm really not wanting to break into, then I will go and pick up a bottle of this. And that's what I did 2 days ago. So I'm damn near halfway through it already, which is a little bit embarrassing, but you get what you get, you know? My wife worked last night. She called out and is not working tonight, but she's over with a friend who is pregnant and having some complications. So she decided to take dinner to her and enjoy some time together as friends. So Adam says, "Hey Tyler, do you ever do any BFS fishing?" Um, no, not yet. That is not really anything that I've seriously gotten into. That said, my cranking setup almost allows for it. Okay, I've got a uh, Daiwa to Tula rod that's a cranking stick that is like a medium action or medium power regular action, I think they call it. So it's a pretty moderate bend, and it will handle lures as light as like an eighth of an ounce. Um, and on that, I've got a Daiwa Tatula SV reel, which does remarkably well when I'm throwing lightweight lures. So I can throw, quarter ounce crankbaits with ease on that thing. I throw everything from light cranks to small jerk baits to larger jerk baits. Well, that's a relative term. I'm probably not going to throw the Megabass Kanata on that thing. Probably a little bit too heavy for that setup. I'd probably go to something more medium heavy, but I do throw pretty much all crankbaits and most jerk baits on that thing. And so it's not super light, right? We're not talking true BFS. So no, I haven't gotten into it yet. I do still throw a spinning rod when I'm looking to go really light, but it's something that has piqued my interest and something that I might get into at some point. I seriously considered it at one point last season, specifically when the I don't know which reel it was, but I think it was the Shimano Corrado MGL 70 came out. Um, I gave away one of those reels on Instagram through Discount Tackle, and was seriously considering getting one for myself as well. But they just sold out so quick that I didn't even quite get on. Didn't have the opportunity. So, and Ron says they didn't even get hit as bad as Massachusetts. Sounds like an absolutely crazy storm. The expo had to finish early due to snow. Is that right, Matt? Is it that? Is that the same one that Smallmouth Crush was at? I saw that he was doing a live stream all day long yesterday and today. Is that the same expo or no? Adam says you can get a good deal on an airbrush setup at Michael's or Hobby Lobby with coupons. Yeah, coupons are a big deal, but I don't know how much. When I looked into it recently, I didn't see that Hobby Lobby or Michael's had any coupons available for those types of products. And to be honest with you, I'd like to get something that's going to last a while if and when I do get into airbrushing. I'm not trying to get something that I'm going to grow out of really quickly. So, of course, I am looking at something like the Iwata. Um, I forget what it's called, the HPCS maybe. It's like $150 airbrush setup, and that doesn't include the compressor or the paint. So it adds up pretty quick. And I've spent not very much money in the way of paint pens and a limited number of nail polishes that I really like the pattern. So between all of those, I'll probably use that for a while. Although I could be mistaken on that. It's entirely possible that I will pull the trigger sooner than later on an airbrush, but I don't know that for sure. So thanks for the heads up, Adam. I will keep an eye out for sure. But yeah, I haven't seen those deals myself as of late. So do you have a recommendation on specific model that is perhaps not the HPCS that is still going to be reliable and last me for a while and not end up um, either clogging up or providing low pressure? I want something that's going to be able to do kind of everything that I need to do, um, and also not give me a hard time. Bruce says, Sugar Tit Custom Lures. That's a funny name. Sells a blank 3-inch dark sleeper clone for $1.95. Interesting. Never heard of Sugar Tit Custom Lures. Um, and I'm a little bit scared to look into them if we're being honest, but that's good to know. Interesting. I am Groot. Ty, you throw flies for smallies? Sometimes, not very often, because usually when I'm out fishing for smallies, I'm also targeting largies, and so I rarely just bring my fly rod. Plus, I am a little bit of a snob when it comes to my fly fishing gear, and when I'm fishing for bass, I like to have multiple setups on me at a time. So I suppose I could get into it. Um, and just make a point to really only fish the same setup and bring a couple of bass specific flies. But usually my time is limited, and I'm looking to do as much as I can and catch as many fish as I can in a limited amount of time. I don't fish from a boat very often, and so yeah, it is what it is. I don't really have access to smallmouth in creeks or rivers very close to where I am. So if I'm fishing lakes, I'm bringing usually 2 to 4 setups at a time, and I'll bring a couple, well, one maybe two spinning setups, and then 2 or 3 bait casters. Adam says tonight the wife and I are drinking Basil Hayden. Highly recommend. Yeah, I like Basil Hayden a lot. Bottle, their packaging is really cool too. So I used to drink Basil Hayden a fair amount, but I don't want to say that I outgrew it, because that's not the case. I still like it quite a bit, but it does have a little bit of a different flavor profile. And not to hate on it, because everybody has their own preferences, but I prefer something that's a little bit uh, full bodied and spiced, almost on the sweet end. And I find that Basil Hayden just has a little bit of uh, more bite to it, in that it's a flatter flavor, almost oh, I wish I had the right adjectives to use, but I don't find it as deep of a flavor profile, and that's just my opinion, right? I also haven't drank it in um, at least a few months, maybe the better part of 6 months. So Adam says I just bought whoop, a finesse glide bait, 5/30 of an ounce. Holy hell, dude, that is super light. I thought something like this Savage Gear Shine Glide in the 5.5 inch, whatever this is, was pretty finessey to me. But I think this thing is closer to, I don't know, 3/4 of an ounce. So 5/32. That is absolutely crazy. What did you get? Was that like the Gancraft in one of their smaller sizes, or what was that? And what kind of gear are you planning on throwing that on, man? That's insane. Daniel, I also am a fan of the Tatula SV. Yeah, it's a hell of a reel for sure. I wish I had five of them, if we're being honest, but I do like to mix it up. So, um, Daniel, hit me up one more time about this because this is yours to have. We just need to negotiate pricing, but this reel is in perfect condition. Only thing is, I do not have the box for it. I'm not one of those guys that hoards uh, reel boxes, and so I don't have the original packaging. But if anything, this thing was fished maybe once. I really don't see any signs of wear on it, even though it's spooled up with braid that is probably either 40 or 50 pound, for being honest. And my guess is that it's um, just by the feel of it and the look of it. I think it's probably uh, Suffix 832 in their moss green in like a 40 or a 50 pound. But of course, if you want me to take the line off, I certainly can. But um, if you still want the reel, it's all yours, man. Adam says Shimano released a Corrado BFS in the American market recently. Maybe that was the one instead of the Corrado MGL 70 was the Corrado BFS that I was seriously wanting. But Discount Tackle got it in and sold out of it almost immediately. And I know that Jimmy um, was able to get one, but I was not. He got on it like same day. So yeah, it is what it is. The brand ambassador from Discount Tackle usually have an opportunity to buy stuff when it's in stock, but when it's something that's brand new, if it's accounted for by the time that it's up on the market, if it's a highly sought after product, it will sell out quickly, and they're not going to set them aside for guys like us. So it's just part of the deal. Because yeah, um, same. They aren't going to be doing anything tomorrow. Paul from Piz had to sell baits. He was going to have tomorrow earlier today at 5 p.m. when they shut it down. Interesting. Okay, same expo. They shut it down. Interesting. I did not realize that. Ron says that is a good airbrush. Yeah, no, I know it is. It's just it's not cheap, man. That HPCS is a high quality airbrush, and that's the reason that I've kind of decided that that's the one that I'm most interested in. But uh, it's pretty expensive, so it's just I'm not fully committed to painting baits, and I'd rather not buy all the stuff and put 300 to 500 bucks into the gear if I'm not going to get more serious about it. And the reality is, I've got so many baits already that it would almost need to be a side business for me, like it is for Debo, where he's still primarily fishing with mainstream stuff and then painting baits in order to sell for other people, to other people. So eh, that's something that I could and would consider, but I'm just dabbling, just dipping my toes into um, the whole bait making deal. So we'll see about that. Sugar Tit has a ton of clones, Megabass, and good selection of glide blanks. Everything seems cheaper than other sites, says Bruce. Interesting. Well, let me just pull up another tab. Sugar Tits. Something's gonna come up. I don't want this. All right. Okay. I think I'm okay. So I will look that up a little bit later when we're done here, but I appreciate you mentioning that, man. Adam says, I know nothing about airbrush rigs. I would recommend watching reviews from people that paint miniature figures for wargaming. They're really into them and know all the ins and outs. Yeah, totally. When you go to craft shops like Hobby Lobby and Michaels, you're going to find that the airbrushes and everything like that are in the, say, model airplane, model car section of the store. And so, yeah, you're absolutely spot on about that. and I have done a little bit of initial research into which ones are good, which ones are not, reading reviews online and watching some videos. So I know kind of what I'm looking for, but just haven't narrowed in on multiple models, or been able to find a price point that is just a little bit better than that $150 price point. Let me try and catch up on these comments real quick, and then I want you guys to fire away with some must or bust questions, and we can all kind of chime in if you guys would like. But Michael says recently got 10 of the OG Tinies. Really looking forward to trying them out now in the pre-spawn. I am jealous. I've been looking for those, looking around a little bit, not super aggressively because I do like to add other things to my cart instead of just making a plain purchase for one specific thing. But if you're willing to trade some of those tiny OGs, I would be happy to. If not, tell us where you bought them, man, and if they're still in stock, because it seems like the ones that have been coming in stock have been selling out very quickly. Now, on Tackle Warehouse and a couple of other places, I've seen the Rapala DT8 in stock in a number of colors, and I will eventually pick those up, but don't have as much of a need for that as I do the Tiny OG. Uh, Simply because that Tiny OG only runs to 4 feet, and to me, that is super appealing, especially in comparison to the OG Slim, which is a 6 foot diver. Whereas the DT series, I've already got a million of, well, I shouldn't say a million, but I've got a bunch of the DT4s, like a whole row of DT4s, probably 20 of them or more. And then a bunch of DT6s, which I throw a lot, and then some DT10s. So the 8s will probably replace the 10s mostly, especially because that body size appeals to me more than on the 10. But I've also got the BX Brats, which run 3 and 6 feet. So, uh, yeah, that tiny OG appeals to me when thinking about a flat-sided bait that's going to run a little bit shallower. I've only got a handful of baits that do that, and I'm really looking forward to having that bait in my hands, and hopefully sooner than later, so that I've got it for the pre-spawn. So Adam says we also drink a lot of Jack Daniel's single barrel. Yeah, that's a good bourbon too, man. Good bang for the buck as well. Not one that I go to all that often, but usually I'm happy with when I do. Cheers, man. I am Groot says I thought I was hardcore drinking White Claws. Yeah, White Claws are not hardcore by any means. Although, I'm not much of a seltzer guy, but hate to say it, and I also am not really embarrassed to say it, but when Happy Dad makes its way here and is a bit more mainstream in general, Happy Dad is the new seltzer put out by the Nelk Boys, and the Full Send. I will probably give that a whirl, just because it's insane how much White Claw and a couple of those other seltzer brands have really dominated that market. And I find Full Send and the Nelk Boys to be entertaining and funny, and I will try that when it comes out here in Colorado. Matt says, to me, anything under 1 ounce is finesse style swim bait. Yeah, I'm mostly in the same camp as that, especially when it comes to hard baits. Now, paddle tail swim baits are a different story altogether. Of course, throwing something along the lines of, a Megabass Spark Shad in the 3 inch or anything along those lines is finesse for sure, but those are super light. You throw one of those guys on an Okashira screwhead, and it's a perfect combination. Of course, this is not that. Um, we've talked about this before, but this is kind of a homemade spy bait, if you will, that I've made out of an Okashira screwhead with a 3.8-inch Kitech with the tail cut off And then I've added this little tail spinner that has a screw lock on it that is made by Zappu. And this is called the Para R. P E R A space R. And cool little deal. Check out that terminal tackle if you don't already have them, and you're open to it. It's a good deal. Adam, I knew it was a Gancraft. Just picked up a Cast King Zephyr BFS reel. Yeah, that's the other one that has caught my eye in the past as a good bang for the buck BFS reel. I've heard good things about it. I know it gets good reviews and it's reasonably priced. What, like 60, 65 bucks or something like that. So I've thought about getting that reel myself, but just don't have a rod to pair up with it. And never really quite saw a need for it just yet. So um, congrats on the purchase, man. I hope you like it for sure. Daniel doesn't need a box for the reel. Okay, cool. Good to know. And yes, you want it. So I will set this aside for you. We will talk pricing because ordinarily these things come in uh, combos, and the combo is like 230 bucks. But if you were to buy them separately, it's going to be a little bit more. So, yeah, whatever. Let's talk about it offline and just decide what we both think is fair and go from there. Okay. Of course, I am willing uh, to throw in, and do a package deal for you if you want. I did mention these two other reels as well, which are both righties, but I've got other reels that we could talk about as well. And they're all in great shape. I'm not going to sell you one of my reels that is heavily used or has any significant signs of wear and tear. So keep that in mind. Yeah, Matt is right about that. The Gamcraft 70 obviously isn't going to have the same kind of action as a larger glide bait. Um, they're more of a straight retrieve bait more than a glide bait. So they'll just have a really subtle kick to them. Um, if you twitch them, they're not going to go out like a traditional glide bait would. So really, they're more of like a lazy swim bait, if you will. And Brian says the MGL 70 is his favorite reel of all time. Interesting, man. Looks like I maybe missed the boat on that. Ron, I do have a Hobby Lobby, and I've been there a couple times recently. In fact, why do you ask, man? I've got one less than 10 minutes from me. Um, I've got a couple of Hobby Lobbies relatively close to me. So why do you ask? What do you have in mind? What do you want me to look into? Holy crap! How far behind on the comments am I? It looked like I was just caught up, and I guess I'm not. Jay Buckman says, I just started airbrushing. Very expensive to get into. Yeah, it sounds like it, man. The Eclipse HPCS is great, and so is the Badger Sotar 2020. Interesting. Haven't heard of that one. I should look into it for sure. Land Big Fish usually has a lot of them in stock. Okay. I didn't know that Land Big Fish even sold airbrushing equipment, but good to know. And Ron says, don't take the bait, Tyler. Um, are you talking about sugar tits or what? Michael says Alpha's Air TW by Daiwa is awesome, but they're like 300 bucks. Worth it if you want a true ultralight BFS. Interesting. And Ron says, be sure to get a quiet generator. I've heard that as well. That is something that I would and will do if and when I get into airbrushing. I don't want something that I'm going to only have to use out in the garage. Um, I want to be able to do this inside where I'm not necessarily disturbing the entire family or just giving myself a headache every time I turn the damn thing on. So we'll see. That's not true, Daniel. Jack Daniels is a bourbon. You tell me why Jack Daniels is a whiskey and not a bourbon. Because this is like the square versus rectangle conversation, man. I'm pretty sure you're wrong about that. Michael got the tiny OGs at Cabela's online. What? Interesting. I might need to look into that, man. Thank you very much for the heads up. Matt, Tyler, have you ever heard of the Bagley Fat Cat Cranks? I was unable to get some for pretty cheap and looks like a great profile. Have you ever tried any Storm Lightning Shads? Got some from Eric. No, actually, I haven't. Either one. The Bagley Fat Cat Cranks. Fat Cat Cranks. No. And the Storm Lightning Shads, you got some from Eric. I would imagine that they're pretty good if Eric had a bunch of them and is willing to offload them. Um, I don't think he has a lot of garbage stuff and probably has enough integrity that he wouldn't be looking to offload garbage stuff either. So interesting. I don't know about either of those, man. Yeah, Daniel, I think I found the same thing. With the perch and the live river shad and the OG tiny, I found those in stock as well. Decent colors, but not my favorite for sure. Matt says this or that, balsa cranks or ABS. Uh, Good question. So I think it depends on the scenario. If I'm looking for something with high buoyancy and a quieter, more subtle action, of course, uh, you know, balsa is going to be the deal, right? If we're being honest. Um, But for almost all other situations, if I want a rattle, if I want a more aggressive action, if I want slightly better deflection properties, and especially if I want durability, then I'm going to go ABS. So I don't have a lot of balsa, and I find that it tends to be really expensive to purchase. So that is why I'm considering making more and more of my own balsa cranks simply because I'll be able to customize them quite a bit more by doing it myself. I'll be able to make them cheaper and get more of what I want out of them. At least that's my train of thought. So, as you guys know, I'm a huge fan of the Rapala DT series, but outside of that, I don't throw a lot of balsa baits. And even still, I'm a little bit situation specific when I do throw the DTs. So I would say ABS are more of my go-to when you're asking this or that. I would say ABS. Guggen Slayer, what's up, man? You went to the fishing expo? Were you there when it shut down? How was it getting back, man? And Ron, I know that they have coupons in the papers of up to 40% off, but they haven't recently. I think they've perhaps shut that down. And I don't often see them for the airbrushes themselves. So, yeah, I don't know. Bruce says air compressor. Talk to DB if you don't plan on being really mobile. He has a mid size that isn't loud. Talk to Debo, he says. Yeah, that is something that I should definitely do is consult with Debo because I've tried looking at his videos to see if he included links to, affiliate links of stuff that he uses, and I can't seem to find any of that. So I should just ask him directly. You're absolutely right about that. There is some gear that he uses that I would not, but but I should find out what specifically he's using because it seems like he's done a lot of volume over the last couple of years. If he's still using the same gun, then then it's definitely worth looking into. And Jay says, get at least a 3-gallon air compressor. That sounds big, but I haven't looked into that enough. Bigger the compressor, the less cycles it has to run for pressure, says Bruce. And it can fill tires, lol. Yeah, I don't need a compressor that can fill tires. Um, I've already got that handled. So thanks, man. And Matt says, Tyler, Jack Daniels is a Tennessee sour mash whiskey, very similar to bourbon, but it's not. Okay, so sour mash is your argument. It doesn't need to be made in Kentucky to be a bourbon, though, guys. Just the U.S. Um, I hate to look this up and have the debate right now, but oh, I'm getting myself hooked with baits here. So looks like you guys are correct, but I don't know exactly um, why. If I do need to look further into it, but I think technically Jack Daniels is a bourbon under the official rules of what constitutes a bourbon. But Jack Daniels chooses not to call themselves a bourbon, but rather a whiskey. But if we're looking at what makes a bourbon, I'm literally Googling that. At least 51% corn. Um, a whiskey needs to be distilled from a mixture of grains or mash that's at least 51% corn. And it's got to be made in new charred oaked barrels. I know that much. But what else? What else? Got to be made in the U.S. I already mentioned that. 51% corn. The whiskey cannot enter the barrel at higher than 125 proof. Can't enter the bottle at less than 80 proof. I think Jack Daniels fits that. Nothing can be added but water and only to lessen the proof when necessary. Um, so I think what I said just it stands. That Jack Daniels is a bourbon, but chooses to not classify itself as that. And sorry to go down that rabbit hole. Kind of crazy that we're talking about bourbon for minutes and minutes. Debo uses the Iwata Eclipse, says Bruce. Okay. That saves myself a little bit of time. Hey, Matt, thanks for deleting that comment from whoever it was. M. De- Deborah Perez. Uh, you know, uh, for whatever reason, we've had some spammers in here the last couple weeks. I think that's a little bit more common these days, and it's a shame. But that is a huge advantage to having moderators like Matt and Daniel. So thank you, appreciate you. Ron says I was looking into painting until I was shut down by my asthma doc. I can send you some info on the compressor, uh, or I could buy, or no. Do you not have an airbrush? You tell me, Ron. I could trade you or buy your airbrush if you've got the information, or if you've got the equipment rather. But if you don't have it, then yeah, do send me information. I'm happy to have it. Adam, you got that, boy. You got that bot. Yeah, he's got him. Oh, Kid Iraq Ray is in the house. What's up, dude? You been looking out for me? Still been throwing my 110 because I don't want to lose it. LOL. So today I picked up a Berkeley Stunna. Great bait for sure. Couldn't decide on which one to get. It seems solid. Yeah, it does seem like a good bait for sure. The Berkeley Stunna definitely makes my list of say top 3 or top 5 jerk baits that I am most excited to try this year in 2022 that I did not have an opportunity to try last year. So, which color did you get, man? We can kind of compare real quick if you want. I only got a couple to try out uh, up front as well. So, I picked up 3. One is in this, it's like a matte pro blue type of finish. I don't know what they call it, cold shad or something like that. Pretty sweet. One is in more of like this. Oh, what would they? I don't know what their color patterns are called, but this is like a a pearl orange belly. Shit. Sorry, guys. And pretty classic color pattern, similar to what you get from Megabass. And then I did get a perch pattern as well. So I only picked up 3 of these to start out with, just because I got them very end of season and actually didn't have a chance to fish them just yet. So these 3 will cover my bases mostly. And I first want to see how it acts in the water, how I like it compared to say the Vision 110 or the Re-Range or the Lucky Craft pointer or the Spromix stick. Or even, another bait that I'm looking forward to trying is the 13 Fishing Loco Special. Kind of same price range as that Stunna in that $15-16 price point, but supposed to be a very high performing jerk bait as well. So yeah, high on the list. So good to see you in here, man. Thanks for chiming in. Glad to see that you got a Berkeley Stunna in your hands, or a couple. I don't know what you got. Ron says I didn't get that far. Only did the legwork. Yeah. Well, I'm in the middle of the legwork myself, so I hear you 1,000%. But yeah, if you've got information for me, if you can help at all in the purchasing process or to sway me one way or another, that would be awesome. Matt says this or that, expensive rods or cheaper rods. Good question. Okay. Um, I hate to say it, but I'm somewhere in between. Um, I would generally opt for a mid price point rod and a mid price point reel. I think there's a tipping point when it comes to bang for the buck, when it comes to quality for what you're paying for. And I personally think that 150 to $200 is where you really get the most. Um, if you're trying to spend less than $100, you're not going to get great quality in general. That's my general opinion. I am curious to try that Daiwa Aired X, which I did just purchase, which is a $50 rod. I got it on sale for like 38 bucks. Super excited to try that. But in general, I find that all my rods that are between $100 and $200 are good enough. They're light, they're sensitive, and they're durable as well. They're made well enough to where I'm happy um, with what I've got. And I find that stuff that's cheaper usually doesn't hold up as long. So if I had to pick one, I would say more expensive, but I'm not going to go with you know top of the line quality. I'm not going to say 3 plus $100 rods if that's your question. Ray says that's called the Stone Cold, and you're absolutely right. You got the same one? Yeah, it's an awesome color pattern for sure. I like that it's that natural pro blue, but it's also uh, more of a matte finish that I think it'll perform well in a lot of different clarities, but still look natural. So Matt says I want to try that Shimano World Minnow with the foil film in the middle. I haven't seen that. I don't really even know what you're talking about. Um, and Daniel says that pearl one is called Hanky Panky. Okay, yeah, that I am not on top of what the color patterns are called from Berkeley. So thank you guys for the info on that. Stone Cold and Hanky Panky. I did not remember either one of those. And Bruce says, Tyler, if you're planning on painting in the same place where you're using your compressor for tires, which I'm not, look into a regulator and you can save cash and uh just use it or justify it. I don't know what you're saying. Ron says, must or bust the Booyah Melee. Okay, that is a good question. And I don't know if this is controversial or not, but I'm gonna say must. Um, and it's sad that I don't have it sitting here right in front of me, but I think the Booyah Melee is slightly underrated. Okay, I've talked about it before, but I will mention it again right now. This bait has a relatively long shank hook on it and a solid single wire bait keeper. It's a good hook, right? It's a medium, almost heavy gauge wire, and it's going to not only set the hook well, but hold your trailers on there well. I like the way that this skirt is put on there, and the fact that there's Flashaboo built into it. This design of where the blade is connected to the head is super unique. Now, obviously, it's going to wear a little bit. You see that I've got some paint worn down from just fishing this color a couple of times. But that's typical of anything that you get. One downside to this bait is that I have found these blades are a little bit thin and do bend easily. But here's a pro is that you see that the weight is stamped on the blade, which is cool, not super common. Um, and the biggest feature of this bait is the fact that this blade is connected behind the nose of the head. Okay. That is a really big deal. And the in terms of the way that this bait acts. So as I've explained to you guys before, the best way that I can explain this, um, best thing I can compare this to is the Strike King Rage Blade. And this is a bladed jig where the weight is placed below the blade. Now, these are attached. The weight and the blade are one on the Rage Blade. But what you get is that when this contacts cover, especially wood, this is going to swim up and over without snagging nearly as easily. And the same is true for the Melee. So instead of rolling over and connecting, it's going to roll up and over instead of just sideways and snag into the wood that you're fishing. So I think the Melee fits into a rare category that is bladed jigs that do well around wood. So I think it's a solid bait. And if I had to choose must versus bust, I'm going to go with must. But it does fly under the radar a little bit. Ray says, I just got the Stone Cold one since I'm a noob. I did get a cheap 6.6 Eagle rod and a cheap BFS formula reel just for a shorter rod to learn on. Yeah, I think it's smart to learn on a shorter rod, especially when it comes to a jerkbait, because all of the movement and the action come from the twitches of the rod. The reel is just to pick up the slack in your line. Um, so, technically speaking, the shorter the better. Now, you do still want some leverage to be able to set the hook and keep a fish pinned once you've got them. So, there's a sweet spot there, but really it's somewhere between 6 and 7 feet. And most people would say between 6.5 and 7 feet. So, I use a 6'9" jerkbait rod, I believe. I used to use a 6'10". I think it's 6'8" or 6'9" now. And I don't think you will be unhappy with learning on a 6'6". So good for you, man. Matt says, I bought some X Nanahan from the hookup, but they ended up sending me the +1 and told them I can just return. And they told me to keep it and refunded me the money. So I just grounded the lip down. Well, I don't know what you're talking about, the X Nanahan, but you ground the lip down. I don't know what to say about that, man. Adam says, "Oh, I forgot. If you get a chance, try Frank Sinatra whiskey from Jack Daniels. Kind of expensive, but pretty good. I've never seen it or heard of it, but thank you for the heads up. I'll keep that in mind. Um, how often do you see it, and how much does it cost? You say kind of expensive. What does that mean?" Ron says, "Mustard bust the Z-Man Stealth Blade Chatterbait." That's a good question, man. I would say, personally, for me, it's a bust. Okay. Um, Here is one rigged up right now. And I really like this pairing. This is the green pumpkin shad color of the Stealth Swimmer paired up with a striking Z2 trailer in the Arkansas shad color. So I think on a more subtle chatterbait like the Stealth Blade, you do need to have a more subtle trailer as well, like a fluke. And I really like Elastec style trailers on chatterbaits. You guys know that it is just such a time saver uh, to have an effective trailer that you do not need to change out very frequently. That said, the Stealth Blade itself is a rather small blade. Let me just show you how this same combo, same color pattern, everything compares side by side with the original. The blade is much smaller on the Stealth Blade. So it's not just the clear plastic blade versus that painted metal blade. It's the fact that it's much smaller. So it doesn't push nearly as much water. Then the second thing about it is the connection, where your line actually ties to. The jackhammer uses a decoy egg snap, I believe. I could be wrong about that, so don't quote me on that. But the Stealth Blade uses an oval split ring, which I am not a huge fan of. I find that the freedom of movement is a bit inhibited, and that affects how much I can feel the bait underwater and that vibration, which is a really big deal. Then, thirdly, where the blade connects to the line tie on the head of the bait. If you look at the jackhammer, it's a pretty standard size. It's just enough to give it really great freedom of movement and allow that blade to make contact with the head and make that loud jackhammer sound that the bait is known for. Whereas the Stealth Blade has a very large line tie on the front. You do not get any sound from this blade hitting the head. It's very, very subtle. And so The unfortunate reality is I think it's overpriced. You do not feel the bait vibrating as consistently as would be ideal. Um, I just think it's a bust if I had to choose one. Okay. Ray says I never heard of either that rod or bait caster before, but I wasn't spending $200 for another lose just to learn. Uh, I hear you, man. I don't blame you. You got to do what you got to do. So I hope you like the combo. If you don't, it is what it is. We all kind of experience that from time to time of feeling a little bit pressed and want to just get gear to get going. And sometimes it works and it's great. Sometimes it's not, and we got to move on and grow from that gear, if you will. And Matt says, "What? You don't know about the Shimano World Minnow jerkbait? Got to check it out." I probably should. I'm sorry about that, man. Ron says, "Must or bust Savage Gear 3D bluegill." The 3D bluegill. Let me make sure we're talking about the same thing. Um, that soft bait, I assume you're talking about. So you're talking about this guy right here. This is the top hook version. This is the line through. Actually, this isn't even a line through version. This just has multiple hook hangers, and I've chosen to rig both. Whereas here's the big version, and it comes, I think, stock with a bottom hook on it. But must or bust on it is tough to say. I think instead of saying bust, I would just personally say that the 4D pulse tail bluegill is a must. Okay, so if you're thinking about the Savage Gear bluegill baits, the 4D pulse tail bluegill is the way to go. It's got a more natural action. I think the weighting is just a little bit better. The swim is ideal, and yeah, I think all of the new pulse tail baits from Savage Gear are awesome. So hope that kind of answers your question, Ron. Will Perriman in the house. What's up, Will? How are you doing tonight, man? I hope you're still in here. I'm sorry I'm behind on the comments. I'm trying to catch up as quickly as I can, but haven't been able to just yet. Matt says, I saw this Imakatsu lure that had a chatterbait attached to a spinnerbait arm, and it looked awesome, like a little school of fish. Um, I don't know what that's called, but I've seen it before as well. Um, and it is a great idea. I don't know why that concept doesn't exist on the U.S. market. It really should, but for whatever reason, does not, man. So, did you pick one up? Is the real question. Grayson in the house. What's up, Grayson? How you doing? Will Perriman says, I support my favorite guys because Ray said that he notices that Will is all over YouTube. And thank you very much, Will. Tyler is one of my favorite guys, says Will. And you're an addict. Aren't we all an addict? I do need to record that audio that Ray suggested as a little spinoff of Might As Well Face It, We're Addicted to Love. Change the words to Might As Well Face It, We're Addicted to Lures. And I might record that audio myself or potentially pay somebody to do so. But wouldn't that be cool if that was kind of my intro to this live stream and to a lot of the videos that I make? Because you know what? We might as well face it. We're addicted to lures. I think we all are. Grayson says, must or bust 10,000 fish. Oh, shoot. I am way behind on comments. 10,000 fish headhunter. I'm going to go with bust, but I haven't tried it yet. Um, I talked about this a couple weeks ago. I like that the hook system is a lot like this guy right here. They borrowed a couple of concepts. So they took the Dark Sleeper, which is an awesome bait, and then they changed the hook system to be like the Amakatsu Stealth Swimmer. Let's see if I can show you guys that. Well, not very well. Sorry, guys. That's not going to focus for you. This is the Stealth Swimmer. It has a hidden hook, which is attached to a magnet. It flips up and allows for a very good hookup ratio on a single hook. So I like the concept, but I don't like the price tag. I don't like the fact that Catchco copies on everything. At 10,000 Fish is a Catchco brand, so I'm just going to go with bust without even having tried it. And that's me. Michael says this or that frog or no frog fur. That was also in the thumbnail tonight. So frog fur is something that I actually do not have enough experience with to be able to quite speak to. I will say it seems gimmicky, right? Uh, because it's a Velcro patch on top of a frog. But the theory of why it exists in the first place does make sense. And the reality is, if it doesn't cost more money to buy this bait than it does an ordinary frog, why not? Right? So if this frog costs the same as this frog, um, not a great comparison, but these are just sitting right next to each other. Also, not a great comparison because these are sitting right next to each other. Um, but I think the frog fur is an interesting concept. I can't quite call it a must, but I also can't say it's a bust just yet. So that's just me. God, guys, I gotta pee. Should I pee in this cup or should I go upstairs and pee in the toilet? Hang on 1 second for me. I got a cup. Don't listen. Oh, you can't hear that. Everybody guess the number of ounces in this cup of pee right now. I'm going to estimate when I'm done, assuming that I don't spill on myself. Well, big gulps, hey? Well, see you later. I am glad I didn't just have a beer bottle this time. One, because it's impossible to pee into. Two, because there was more volume this go around. Uh, if I had to guess, that was about 22 to 24 ounces of piss into a 7-Eleven big gulp cup. So, sorry for that, guys. That's a little embarrassing. I wish I had my bourbon bottle with me because literally I'm on like my last sip already, and that's a shame. So I'm sorry to make you wait for a minute while I just pissed right behind you guys. Uh, but it is what it is. Matt says the jerkbait runs uh, too deep, so I can't use it unless I ground the bill down. It runs about 8 feet with the normal bill and ground it down with a file, so it would run about 5 to 6 feet max. Yeah, see, that's a shame. I'm not usually looking to fish deep diving jerk baits all that often. Uh, so I prefer something that dives in that 3 to max 6 foot range. And if you can get creative and get it to run 5 or 6 feet max, then awesome. But I prefer not to have to do that, especially with an expensive bait, which I assume Shimano jerkbait's expensive straight out of the gate. I don't know that. Ray, breaks your brain to talk about fishing too much sometimes, and I hear you, man. Guggen Slayer says Beast Coast just premiered a new Chatterbait style trailer at the show. Got some, I got some, and they're very good looking. Interesting. Um, I'm curious to learn more about that. I have not heard about that bait, but will keep my eyes peeled. Um, and I'm not surprised that more Chatterbait trailers are making their way onto the market year by year. It just makes sense. I will say the other day I saw what Guggenbaits is releasing this upcoming year, and I'm not only not impressed, but I'm a little disappointed in that they're literally just trying to cover most of their bases that they have not already pursued in terms of soft baits. Um, and that they're known for kind of being copycats, but this really reinforces that idea. So a little disappointing. Matt says must or bust Megabass Mag Draft. I have terrible results using it. Never got a bite. Must. Very quick must. Easy decision for me. I'm a big fan of the Mag Draft in both the freestyle and the original. I fished the freestyle just a little bit more often. I've got great hookup ratio on it, just like I do the regular. I have lost one or two of the regular, and they're twice as expensive. Obviously, not quite that much if you factor in the cost of a hook that you're going to put into the freestyle. But I really like the mag draft in general. Only thing is that it is somewhat speed sensitive. It's a medium speed retrieve bait. You can fish it fast up higher in the water column, especially if you've got a heavier jig head or if you're using an underspin style weedless hook. But I really, really like that bait and do think it's a must. Will says Stealth Blade is a little more than a swim jig, but it works in a finesse sort of way. I agree with that. I'm not saying it's a total bust, like I haven't caught fish on it before, or I don't like it at all. But if we're talking must or bust, like this is a bait that you absolutely should spend $16 on, or you should not. I am going to say no, and that you should get the jackhammer every single day. If you had to choose between the jackhammer and the stealth blade, jackhammer wins every single time in my book. And so I think a lot of thought went into the stealth blade. I like the downsized hook. I like the bait keeper. I like the hand tied skirt. I like most things about the bait, but all of a sudden, the combination of the small blade being plastic with the oval split ring and that oversized eye on the front leads to a little bit less connection that I think validates the price tag and almost brings it down to like the original chatterbait type of quality for me. It's hard to justify that price tag. Matt says I've never seen those Savage Gear ones, only the weedless one. Well, you haven't seen the 40 pulse tails, dude? You gotta check them out. Daniel says must or bust the Berkeley Gilly. Uh I haven't tried it yet, so it's hard for me to answer on that because I haven't personally um seen its action in the water. Of course, I've seen the videos just like everybody else, and it is what it is. Um, I think it looks pretty good. It's intriguing for sure. I think on some applications, like say a drop shot or a free rig or uh, a Tokyo rig. I think it could be an awesome presentation, assuming it does stand up vertically, even when you've got the hook rigged horizontally. So, you've got the flat side of the bait. You rig the hook under the belly, and then apparently it's still supposed to swim up and down. I don't know if that's fully true or not. So, we will have to see about that. I don't have any in my possession, and I have not tried them out. So, I can't tell you, Daniel, but it's intriguing. There's nothing else on the US market like it. Go ahead and say that the Issei gill flat is the same thing and existed before. While that's true, there have been a couple of baits like it on the market before. None have been made by US manufacturers, and and it's a relatively new concept to us US bass fishermen. And so yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see about that. Will says, I've got 4 of the Shimano World Minnows and the divers, and 2 of the new Shimano baits um, on order through ALF. Interesting. Very cool, Will. Ray says, Tyler, I picked up one of those tiny jackhammers in 3/8. Thinking of trimming a fluke down as a trailer for it. Thoughts? Oh, and for combos, my 6-year-old gets them when I upgrade. He has too. Right on, man. When you say tiny jackhammers, I'm not quite sure what you mean. 3/8 of an ounce is my go-to size when it comes to the jackhammer chatterbait. I don't know if that's going to show you right there. You can see in that red portion, 3/8. I do throw a 3/8 of an ounce, like, I don't know, 75% of the time. I like 3/8 for fishing anywhere from 0 to 6 feet of water. Okay. If I'm fishing deeper than that or I want to stay on bottom, then I will go to a half. If I'm fishing deep, then that's where I will step up to the 3/4 or the 1 1/4, which I very rarely fish. So the 3/8, in my opinion, is the best. But tiny jackhammer, I don't know if you're talking about the original or the stealth blade. Uh, so anyway, I think trimming down a trailer can be appropriate in certain circumstances, but like this guy right here, again, is that Strike King Z2 trailer, and uh, is this the Z2 or the baby Z2? I'm gonna rip it off of this bait keeper just for you and for me to be able to see. I think this is the original Z2. So this is a 5-inch soft plastic trailer. And I do think that in some instances, trimming down a trailer can be appropriate. I think the original Yamamoto is really the best size. It's a 4-inch bait, and I do think a 4-inch soft plastic trailer fits best on the jackhammer. Okay, so if you take a look at this, I will pull the skirting material out of the way, show you this 4/0 hook, and just line it up for you. So as you can see, that thing matches almost perfectly. I'll let this skirt all the way down. Of course, this one's maybe been trimmed ever so slightly, but when I put this trailer behind, you see that that comes out almost perfectly. Now, when I grab a trailer that's just a little bit bigger than that, and here is one of my original favorite trailers, and this is the Strike King Blade Minnow. It's flat on top, real keeled belly there. This is a 4.5-inch bait. When I line this up to where it would be rigged, you'll see that this is a bit longer. That half of an inch makes quite a bit of difference. So um, I would trim this down just a little bit. I do think a 4-inch trailer on the jackhammer chatterbait is the ideal size. I think 4.5 and 5-inch is too long. I think 3.5 is a little bit short, but works. And I think 4-inch is ideal on that bait. And good for you for passing your stuff down to your kid when you upgrade equipment. That's awesome, man. What a lucky 6-year-old. I wish that my 6-year-old daughter was a bit more in tune with fishing and interested in my equipment when I upgrade. Now, she's got a decent spin cast setup herself, nothing to complain about. And she's happy with it. So that said, my kids are spoiled. We'll have opportunities if and when they want them for fly fishing, for bass fishing, any type of equipment, whether it's spinning, bait casting, fly fishing, and I just hope and pray that they will be into fishing at some point. Will says, I have that zinger, which is a chatterbait blade on a spinnerbait. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know about that. Ron says he would do the intro. Well, would you sing it for me? Yeah, it does sound pretty cool. Thanks for waiting for me while I peed, guys. Um, Michael guessed only 10 ounces of piss. No, it was more than double that, man. I'm pretty sure a big gulp is 32 ounces, and literally it's like up to here. Uh, so I'm guessing between 20 and 24 ounces. Will says dribbles are free. Yeah, hook sets and dribbles are free for sure. No, I just zoomed ahead on these comments. I apologize for that. Wow. All right. Daniel, might need to see the doctor. Your water pressure sounds low. Yeah, I also just stay hydrated pretty well. I've got a bottle of water here. This is not going to make me as happy or as satisfied as having another pour of bourbon. And Matt says, how are you putting up with that clicking noise? I'd be going nuts. Yeah, I'm just trying to block it out right now. Obviously, you heard it while I was pissing. It is about 6 feet from my face right now. I didn't know it was going on until I came down here to stream. I turned off my HVAC system, came down here, and after everything turned off, then I heard that clicking. And yeah, it's annoying, but literally I only noticed it minutes before coming on here. So I will most certainly deal with that after the stream or tomorrow because I don't care for it. um, but I'm trying to block it out right now and hang out with you guys. Got to do what you got to do. Ray says that he thinks the Boom Boom Frog is gimmicky, but just in his opinion. Yeah, no, it is a gimmicky concept, that's for sure. Um, I do wonder about it though. Like nobody else is doing it. That's why it seems gimmicky, right? Is that it's literally a Velcro patch on top of a frog, but people would be uh, into the frog, would like it just fine, especially since Fred Rumbanis is endorsing it. If it was a standard frog, it's got a firm yet still collapsible body. I think it's going to hold up pretty well. It's got good skirting material. It's got sticky sharp hooks that are close to the body but not perfectly touching. So I think the hookup ratio on this frog is going to be solid. But that frog fur seems to get all of the attention when it comes to conversation about the bait. So Yeah, it's kind of fascinating, but also genius when it comes to marketing a bait like that. So its mama says no shame in piss jugs. Yeah, yeah, well, gotta have something here. I've learned that over time, but I guess I haven't learned to bring my liquor bottle down here with me, and I apologize for that. So I might need to dip out in a second to go grab it if I can burn through these comments. Matt's still talking about that ex Nanahan. What the heck? When did the mag draft work for you, and what time of year? And where were you fishing? Near grass, wood, or rocks? So I've had success on it mostly near rocks and near grass. Not wood as much, although you would think a freestyle would do really well around wood. I fish top waters, I fish Texas rigs, and I fish Jika rigs or Tokyo rigs around wood quite a bit more than I do a swim bait. So uh, paralleling riprap banks and also that fishing faster um, above submergent grass has done really well for me with that mag draft. And when fishing along riprap banks, I've used the mag draft and the mag draft freestyle, and then when fishing above grass, I've mostly used the freestyle. But yeah, I would say uh, literally from early season, early pre-spawn, all the way up through midsummer, I've done well on the mag draft, and for that matter, I've caught them in the fall too. But uh, for me, pre-spawn is the best time. Um, I caught my very first fish of the year in 2020 on the mag draft freestyle, uh, like in late March. And so, yeah, I definitely do recommend throwing it, but usually around a slightly more aggressive feeding fish because of that speed sensitivity to it. You do have to have fish that are going to see it or chase it. Uh, you're not usually going to be able to work the bait slow enough to run into the fish or have them be able to inspect it closely. So, slightly more aggressive type of bite is what you need for that. Must or bust red crankbaits, asks Matt. Um, I would say must. And here's the reason is I not only do I think they will work well early in the spring, but I think they work well more year round than most people would admit. Most people pull out red cranks in the pre-spawn and then put them away once the spawn comes along, and that's pretty much it for the year. And for me, I think water clarity is a huge deal when it comes to that. So, um, if ever I've got poor water clarity, I think throwing red over chartreuse is often just as effective, if not more, in my waters here in Colorado. So I think they're underrated as a whole and more of a must than a bust, if I had to say. Daniel says, I did order the green pumpkin, red, Heights Hot Craw jackhammer for spring. That is awesome. Dude, that's one of my absolute favorites. I mean, I've only been fishing the fire craw for the last 2 seasons, but that high top craw has been my go-to for like the last 4 years, and I do think that it's the best color, um, one of the better producers that I've had over the years. So just super underrated. Good for clear and stained water. It's a pretty subtle. Just the belly is red. So if you're fishing this in skinny water where there are crawdads, I'm telling you, uh, it's an awesome presentation. If you're fishing it along riprap banks, it's the way to go more year round than say that fire craw. The Heights Hot Craw was killer for me and still is every single year and year round as well. So good pickup on that, man. Grayson says, Kitech Fat Swing Impact, the 7.8 inch or whatever it is, must or bust. Good question. I don't actually have the 7.8. I've only got the 6.8. So if I had to answer that question, I would say must. And here's the reason, is the value. So they're even a little bit cheaper than what you pay for with the Megabass Mag Draft. And at the 7.8 inch size, which is the 8-inch size, it's huge. You get 2 in a pack for like $10. Or in this size, the 6.8, you get 3 to a pack for like $10. So these are a good deal. Now they're lacking detail. You don't get any eyes on them, anything like that. But the colors are good, and the action is totally different than what you get out of a mag draft, in that it has a lot wider kick, a lot more action out of this thing. So you can fish this in many more ways than you can a mag draft. The mag draft, like I said, is speed sensitive, does need to be fished on more of a medium speed retrieve, whereas the Kitech can be fished very slow along bottom or a little bit quicker, and it's going to have a much wider kick to it. So you can fish this truly year round, and it's going to excel in the winter time, and then you just slightly speed it up for that more aggressive action as the season goes on. But I think it's a must have. But I should get the 7.8. Honestly, that 6.8 I've got rigged on an Owner Beast 8-aught hook, and it fits really well. So that's just me. Barking Spider, sorry about that. Ron says must or bust Biospawn Rattlebot lipless. I don't know. I haven't tried it. It definitely looks a little bit funky, so I can't say about that. I don't know what the rattle system is like, and I don't know what kind of vibration that thing puts out, but it's a new lipless crankbait on the market, and for that reason, I am inclined to say bust. Also because Biospawn is owned by Ketchco. But that said, of all the companies under that umbrella, I like Biospawn probably the most. And so I don't know for sure. It's just when you consider its price tag compared to a lot of its competitors, I'm inclined to say bust. There are a lot of other lipless cranks that I would rather spend that money on than that. And that's the reason I don't have it at this point in time. Ray says the Mini Max is what I meant. Okay. The Mini Max in 3/8. All right, right on. That's exactly what this guy is right here. Chatterbait Mini Max from Z-Man in the 3/8 ounce. Sweet, man. I haven't tried that, but I have picked up a handful of them so far and am excited to put them to use this upcoming year. So when you say mini jackhammer, what you meant was the Mini Max. And yes, that is one of the newer additions to the Chatterbait lineup, and I'm excited to try it. I didn't get a chance this past season, late in the season, to try it. I just picked them up like over Black Friday, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And Will says the Mini Max works great with the goat, the baby goat, as a trailer. Yeah, I would imagine it's perfect with the baby goat. Anything in that 3 to 3.5 inch range is going to be ideal because it's got a 2-aught hook, if I'm not mistaken. Matt says those 7.8s get crushed by stripers or hybrids if you have them. Yeah, I would imagine. That's right. And I wouldn't go that far, Will, to say that the Mini Max is a compact jackhammer. Um, Now close, but it has a smaller blade. It has less detail in the paint. Doesn't have eyes on the head. So I don't know. With that smaller blade, I would imagine that the displacement of water is not as substantial, and that the blade to head contact or um, the sound that it makes underwater is not as substantial. So to say that it's a compact jackhammer is kind of an aggressive statement, and I don't know about that. That said, I could easily be proven wrong. I might not know what I'm talking about at all. Matt says that's one thing I need to work on this year is chatterbaits. That's the reason I got those CFL Freedom ones. Want to see if it's better than my swim jigs. Well, the CFL won't be. The CFL is a football head, but if you just got the Freedom Chatterbait, um, I don't. It's going to be mixed. I don't think you're going to find that it's better than your swim jigs because it's a different application, And in general, I think a swim jig is a much more stealthy presentation, and where you're looking for a swim jig to come through the grass, a chatterbait will do well also. So I think the Freedom Chatterbait doesn't hold a lot of advantages over a standard chatterbait, but the CFL is a totally different concept where you get the football jig head and something that is totally unique. Okay, I can pull all three of these out for you real quick. Well, that was two that we're just talking about. Um, Here is the original Freedom Chatterbait head. So the Freedom tackle paired up with Z-Man so that you can screw on any hook that you want onto this head. You can take it off, you can put on a new one. So if you want to use a straight shank, if you want to use an EWG, whatever goes. And then you get that direct blade to head connection, which is cool. But like I said, I don't know how much advantage this holds versus over a standard swim jig. Whereas when you flip to a football jig head, essentially what you're getting here is a swing head with a chatterbait combined. So you get the swing head action out of the original Freedom, and that makes a little bit different of an action, but it doesn't run as true as a traditional swim head or a swim jig head. So I would prefer a swim jig over the original Freedom, but I would probably prefer the CFL over a traditional wobble head or a football jig. It's a really cool concept. And then lastly, here in the same compartment of my tackle box is this naked. This is the Diesel Chatterbait, I believe it's called. This is a swim jig style head, which is very narrow in nature, streamlined with a vertical line tie, very aggressive bait keeper on there, and no skirt. This is a naked chatterbait made by Z-Man, um, meant to be fished with their Diesel Minnows swim bait, and it's primarily a saltwater chatterbait, or at least that's what it was intended for. But I like it quite a lot, and do recommend it. So thank you, Adam. Yeah, if you haven't already hit that thumbs up button, there's 19 thumbs up. I super appreciate you guys right now. Thank you for hanging out tonight. This has been a random conversation, but it's gone really well. We've been on here for an hour and 40 minutes, and I can't keep up with you guys in the comments, and that is cool. So, nothing wrong with that. And yeah, I'm way behind, Matt. I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna need to just skip ahead because I don't know what the heck's going on. I just skipped all the way ahead, and that's a problem. Maybe I should just go all the way ahead and just say sorry to the people that I'm skipping. Um, Let me see if there's any more like must or bust questions in here. Ron says must or bust. Yamamoto Cowboy. I don't know. Straight up, I don't have an answer for that. I've heard the people that like it are gung ho about it. So I don't know. It's a very large profile bait. Um, I don't typically fish that type of thing, so I don't know. I can't answer. Okay. Is the Mini Max Chili Dog the same color as the High Top Craw and the Jackhammer? I don't know, Ron. I don't know the Chili Dog. Interesting. Adam says this or that bait room area or happy wife. Dude, um, there is no this or that. It is both, and you have to figure out how to manage having a little bit of each. Okay, um, it is a tough thing to figure out because, of course, your wife is not going to be happy when she sees the space that you're working with, when she sees all of the stuff that you have, and she starts doing a little bit of mental math in her head to understand what you're spending and what you have spent on tackle. Um, that of course she's not going to be happy about that, but hopefully you're spending your money responsibly. Hopefully she has some of her own hobbies and things that she likes to spend her money on, where you can joke around with her about it. For my wife, for example, it is makeup. Like she has this stuff from a company called Beauty Counter that she is a brand ambassador or an affiliate for. I don't know what you'd call it, and it's like clean makeup, right? So it's theoretically makeup that is better for the environment. She doesn't take on the makeup. She's not that type of woman, but it's one of those things that she cares about, as well as the stuff in our kitchen. We've got more appliances than you could ever imagine or want, but we've got the room to store them. Um, and so she does what she does, and she also likes clothes. So she has her things. I have my things. She knows that fishing is one thing that I'm over the top with. And I think if you balance things right, you can have both. So I'd like to say I have a happy wife and a bait room, but that's just me, man. Great question, though. Uh, Matt says it's the CFL chatterbait, but I got it to use near rocks and heavy current where my swim jigs don't really work the best and get stuck a lot. Yeah, well, I wouldn't recommend throwing a swim jig near that stuff in the first place anyway. Um, I would throw a football jig instead of a swim jig straight out of the gate. But yeah, I do think using a wobblehead or that CFL chatterbait is a good idea, especially in the warmer water months where you can fish that thing on a little bit more of a straight retrieve. For a football jig, you might work the thing a little bit slower. You might drag it and bring it up and over individual rocks, whereas a wobblehead and that CFL chatterbait, you're going to work low and slow to medium speed, where you're making contact constantly, but you're never really stopping it. You're not going to yo-yo that thing. So keep that in mind. Guggen Slayer says I always lose my jackhammers, dude. That sucks. Uh, Hit me up. I might have a white and chartreuse that I could send you, but I don't lose that many jackhammer chatterbaits. In fact, I've got probably a half a dozen that still have trailers on them, are currently rigged. This one has line on it from when I fished it last, but I've only fished this one a handful of times. You can see a little bit of paint is worn off of the blade and on the bottom of the head, but I've got a half a dozen or more that are beat to death, that are still going strong. A lot of these jackhammers I've had to retie my own skirts on because the original ones were not wire tied. They were tied by hand with a type of thread, which didn't hold on there very well. So, that said, I don't lose them all that often. I've lost a handful ever, and I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fish on the jackhammer, in all color patterns, and I've got too many of them. Um, Guggen Slayer, hit me up on Instagram or send me an email to hooksets are free 18 at gmail.com. Very well might just hook you up with a white and chartreuse jackhammer. All right. Ray says, I'm wondering if lack of grass in my home lake slash reservoir is hurting my swim jig game. Probably. Uh, you just need to adjust the way that you're fishing the bait. Okay. For me, swim jig fishing, a lot of the time is like a finessey version of a spinner bait. I've talked about this a fair amount, but I fish a swim jig in a lot of the same areas that I would and do fish a spinner bait. And I'd like to fish them high in the water column mostly. So I'm not fishing a swim jig or a spinner bait low and slow 80 plus percent of the time. I'm fishing the thing pretty quickly and keeping it high to where I can see the bait tracking back to me. I want to see that bite visually. Um, I would say top 12 inches of the water column most of the time. And yeah, that's just me. Of course, everybody's got their own style. You got to do what you got to do. Matt started a new channel, Southern Jersey Fisherman 028. Haven't uploaded anything, so you can't see it yet. But in 2 weeks, I'm going to have an interview with a swim bait maker. That's awesome, dude. Sweet. Good for you, man. I'm happy that you're starting something up. Ron, what are you talking about? What did I answer like a skilled bomb squad guy? And Ray says, my wife gets all the hair, nails, shoes that she wants, and I get guns and lures. My son is obsessed with fishing, going to the range with me as well. Love his company, and she gets a break. Happy is happy. No doubt about it, Ray. That sounds awesome. I'm glad that you guys have found a balance and that you guys both can like what you like and give each other that room. It's interesting. My wife, back in the day, also used to like getting her hair, nails, and shoes done, but those things have kind of hit the back burner for her, um, where she prefers more makeup and clothes and kitchen related stuff than the hair, nails, and shoes. I don't know. Perhaps some of that is just longevity and new interests, but it's fascinating. Matt grinds a swim jig on the bottom under the current stream where the bass are hanging out. Weird. I don't know what to say about that. I fish a swim jig quite a bit faster, somewhere between medium and fast retrieve and high in the water column. usually not low. Otherwise, I'm going to fish a swim bait low along the bottom, just a standalone swim bait, not a skirted swim jig. I want that skirt flowing and doing its thing in the column. If I'm fishing it slow, I want it to look as realistic as possible, um, and to look just like a straight bait fish that's dying or on the bottom, or just lazily clueless and swimming along, not knowing that it's about to get destroyed. Let me go grab a little bourbon because I think I'm pretty caught up. Ron says, bait room or happy wife? Yes. The answer is yes. You can have both. And Matt, you definitely got to get a GoPro. If you don't already have one, you got to start fishing with it. Um, Now that said, you might run into the same issue that I did in finding that your spots get burned even when you're not. I've got 3,000 subscribers, right? I'm no big content creator by any means. We've got 15 people on here right now, and I love that. But at the same time, i- you would think that my spots wouldn't get blown up. But when I'm posting on Instagram and on YouTube, all of a sudden my spots get blown up. And that's just part of the way it works. So my wife is calling right now. Looks like she's on her way home. I'm going to grab some bourbon, answer this call. I'll be right back in like 2 minutes. All right. You guys hang tight. Think of some more must or bust questions. Hey, babe. All right, I'm coming. Click, click. Sorry about the clicking. Ron says must or bust. Answering service. I would say bust. Daniel says you build a bait room and you never let her enter to see how much tackle you have. That would be nice. Put a lock on that door. But no, my wife does have access to our basement, and unfortunately, does occasionally get to see this, and it is what it is. So sorry, I just had to excuse myself for a minute to answer the phone because my wife just left her friend's house about 20 minutes away. So I'll stay on here a little bit longer. We've been on for almost 2 hours, but there's still 14 people in here. And this is good conversation considering we didn't really have much of a topic of conversation um, coming into the stream. So if you have any more must or bust questions, feel free to ask. Ron says Thunder Mug. That's a must. Okay. I used it once tonight, and I used the toilet once tonight, and I'm sorry that my bladder seems to be an issue. It has been forever. So if you guys know me, you know that that's something you have to put up with from time to time. Matt says, "Yeah, I know. Some of the spots that I fish are not easy to find, and some are now even private. I have to walk about half a mile on train tracks just to get to it, but it's a magical place." Yeah, I have the same deal. I don't have a lot of issues with trespassing or having to go onto real private spots, um, but absolutely, when you can find places that are not pressured, you're going to find that the quality of fishing goes up significantly. So absolutely. And Ray says, so I never did learn how to fish it. Now I dream of having lily pads or grass. LOL. Um, yeah, grass is underrated for sure. Whether it's live or dead, it can hold uh, fish depending on the time of year. You can get into some really good fishing when you've got grass around. Lily pads can be a little bit more challenging to fish depending on what you're working with. So, yeah, I'm sorry to hear that you don't have any of that. Ray says he's just here for the party. Well, sweet man. Um, I'm with you. You know, this is a good break from reality of just being able to hang out and talk fishing, talk about something that we all love, and it's just a passion, and can allow us to get away from the stresses of the quote unquote real world. So I hear you 1000%. Daniel says the clicking is one almost exactly one per second. That's hilarious. Yeah, click, 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 click. And I'm glad that you enjoy these freestyle streams, Daniel. Thank you. Never know what you'll learn. You're absolutely right. I learn from you guys. You learn from me. This is all great information that we're exchanging. Matt says must or bust. Randy's rubber jig. I assume you're talking about Randy Blockett. I haven't tried it, but I'm going to go with a bust. Okay. We talked about this on the last stream, but for me, the Bass Patrol rubber jigs are really tough to beat. Okay. Great firm weed guard that's not too long, straight out of the pack. These things are really well made. Good paint job, recessed line tie, solid mustad hooks on them, rubber skirting material that is very high quality, and they're $3+ you can find them for less than $3 if you shop at Discount Tackle and you buy them at the right time. So $10 a jig is overrated and a bust, in my opinion, for sure. Ron, you guys have referred to a Thunder Mug before. So while I might not be of the generation to really know what a thunder mug is, I never referred to it or had heard of it before. I know what it is now. So yeah, but it's a must, at least on my streams. I'll say that. Michael says must or bust ice fishing. Um, that's a great question and one that I wish I could answer in an educated way because I don't do much ice fishing at all, but it is something that I'm hoping over the next couple of years to really get into. Yeah, as I've mentioned before, I am a skier when it comes to the winter seasons. Living here in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, I uh, grew up and am passionate about fishing or about skiing, and that will always be the case. Of course, we're talking about fishing. I am passionate about fishing. You guys know that, but um, oh my gosh, one of my kids is awake right now. I gotta go check on that. I'll be right back. Goodness gracious. Guys, I'm so sorry. I've got little kids. Yeah, honestly, Ron, I wish you were right. My wife could sit in for me with how many times I've been away recently. Um, she's not home yet, but my kids both just woke up. I've got a fan in their room, and the fan went off, and I turned off the HVAC system before I started streaming tonight, which was 2 hours ago. But they're claiming to be cold, and the fan went off, so they can't sleep as well. Both my 6 and 3-year-old, which now share a room together, are both awake. So um, it's a shame, but I think they're both back down right now. So hopefully that is taken care of. I don't know. My wife will be back home in a matter of minutes at this point. So let's cross our fingers and hope everything is fine and stable. But if not, if I need to end this stream abruptly, I apologize in advance. Otherwise, I think we're okay for now. Okay. Bruce says a lot of the channels I watch are for tips. 80% of the gear they use is way overpriced. Yeah. I would say that's probably true for 80% of the channels on YouTube. And that's not necessarily because they're looking to sell the gear, but either because they've got sponsors and they personally care about using high quality gear and they get it for a discount or for free, or um, I don't even know the other point that I was going to make. But I think a lot of that has to do with that point is that these guys aren't paying full retail for that gear that they're using, and they're not necessarily trying to push it and sell it to the mass market for the full retail price, but because they want to use the best quality gear that they can get, and they're getting it for a cheaper than full price uh, from what you and I would pay for it. So you're absolutely right, Bruce. That most of the stuff is overpriced, but not intentionally. Matt says, Tyler, you think if he would trade um, of made a fur or feather jig, he could have charged that price, or like a hybrid jig with a rubber and marabou. Um, yeah, I would agree. I think that stuff is way overpriced. I think that a $10 rubber jig is too much. Straight up, $5 is probably appropriate, especially if you're looking to generate sales and make some money on commission. I think $5 is fine, but $10 is absolutely absurd. So bus, 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 bus. Michael says, I hear you. I grew up snowboarding in the winter here in the Rockies of northern New Mexico. Did a little bit of ice fishing growing up. Was thinking about getting back into it. Yeah, that is something that I want to do more of. But like I said, when I'm making trips up to the mountains, I am skiing most of the time. I like to ski 15 or 20 days a year. Um, and so it's hard for me to fish during those excursions um, and to really find the time. So I don't know. It's hard for me to realistically think that I might be able to ice fish more than 10 days a year. And at the cost of entry, when you think about what it costs to have the gear, from an auger to a fish finder to the rods, reels, baits, and maybe even an ice hut and a heater, it adds up pretty quickly. We're talking 500 to $1,000 at least to get into ice fishing. it adds up quick. So if I could go somewhere where someone was drilling holes for me and I was willing to wait out the weather without a hut and willing to feel things out without having a fish finder and just do things super dirt cheap, then of course I would do it a handful of times per year or more. But I just I don't have the right contacts. Haven't gone ice fishing with the right people to enjoy myself quite enough and get into it. So we'll see. Bruce says 99.9% of the gear I own is secondhand. I buy large package deals and sell off what I want. What I don't want, at this point, I'm under $100 out of pocket with 5 combos sitting here I have up for sale. LOL. That's insane and good for you, man. I don't want to think about or admit what I've put into everything that I own at this point because it's way too much. But that is awesome. And Ray, it sounds like you already dipped out, but no problem. I totally understand that you got to go when you got to go. So God bless you too. Have a great night and a good rest of your weekend. Thank you for hanging out as long as you did tonight. We've been on 2 hours and 11 minutes and change. So uh, super fun and rare time that we've had a long stream. Bruce says, I did put over 3,000 miles on my Camry in the last 2 months. Well, that's a lot. Pretty sweet. Daniel says, anything Megabass, good baits, but overpriced. Overpriced is relative when it comes to Megabass, right? Because everything is high priced. So, uh, overpriced is an opinion. And it seems like the more I get to know Megabass baits, the less I think they are overpriced, just expensive. Um, so I can't quite say overpriced. You might have to ask more specifically any particular baits that you're curious about or have your eye on, because I haven't tried half of the Megabass baits on the market, but the ones that I have tried, I always agree that they're high quality. Um, it's just most of them are expensive. Matt says you can get DRT jigs cheaper than $5.99, and actually have different design and most jigs, and be able to do some things that other jigs can't. That's a fair point. 10 bucks for a jig is, in my opinion, o- way overdone. The only thing that falls into the category of reasonable and something that I would and have been willing to do is the jackhammer chatterbait. And it has everything to do with that blade and its connection, where it's connected, the sound and vibration that it makes, the water displacement that it puts out. And when you can find them for $12 a pop, I think they're worth it. All other jigs, I think, really $7 is about the tipping point for me, which is why I had initial hesitation with this new swim jig from Evergreen, the Grass Ripper. Um, it is a really well made swim jig, but is like $6.99 a pop. And for me, that is expensive. I do not spend that much on a swim jig ordinarily, but have recently considered it. And from what I see, I am very impressed with what this jig is made up of. So you get that double wire bait keeper, you get a super sharp, sticky medium wire hook. You get that firm but not too firm weed guard that you want out of a swim jig. It does need to be trimmed down a little bit. That vertical line tie and a really cool and relatively unique shape of the head on this thing. So for $6 to $7 a pop, I think this jig is pushing the limits of what I would be willing to spend. But when we're talking about a finesse jig, a football jig, anything with living rubber that I'm going to be working slower through the water column, I think $5 covers it. And $10 is too much for sure. Bruce says buying used is hit or miss though. I have a few turds that are hard to move. I believe you, man. The stunner looks good to you. You plan on moving a few, or you plan on getting a few? Okay, fair enough. Matt says if someone wants to get some DRT 8-ball jigs, there aren't many people in here. They're in stock on DRT USA website. Very good football jigs and can do some cool stuff with them. Interesting. I personally didn't even know that. So if you guys are in the market for a football jig, DRT USA would be a place to do it. I am in the market for some of the lips and the tails for the Clash 9 or the Tiny Clash, I should say. And so it kind of further justifies me making a purchase on their website if their football jigs are in stock at the moment, because that is one of those places, one of those companies and websites where their stuff does not stay in stock for very long. So thank you for the heads up, Matt. I will take a look into that. Michael Romero, any thoughts on Chris Zaldain leaving Megabass for Googans? Yeah. I saw that, I don't know, a week or two ago, and I've got, I don't even want to say mixed thoughts. I'm generally not a fan of it. And here's why is Chris Zaldain has been with Megabass for a long time. So he is leaving a long-term relationship, which is controversial in my opinion in the first place. But to leave a company like Megabass, who puts out some of the best product on the market, for Guggen Baits, who is a new company and puts out mostly knockoff baits, is not only controversial but upsetting to me. And I don't know why Chris Zaldain would have done so, other than the possibility of him getting paid twice or three times as much money to work with Guggen Baits as opposed to Megabass. Now he does claim that he's going to give away a lot of his Megabass stuff and do right by his followers and his fans and blah blah blah. But if he's honestly going to start using Guggen Baits stuff like almost exclusively, I don't get it. He also left Eagle Claw Trocar, which is a Denver-based company. So, uh, I like their stuff, but I also love the fact that they're based here in Colorado and have considered working for them at one time or another. And I don't know. It's hard not to see Chris Zaldain as a little bit of a sellout in this moment. Um, I don't want to label him that way because he's a really good fisherman and a cool guy, intriguing for sure. Uh, but in terms of my opinion on him leaving Megabass for Guggen baits, I'm I'm not happy about it, and I don't have any stake in it. It doesn't even matter to me, but I'm not a fan of it. Daniel says $20 for S crank. Uh, Not doubting the quality, but no way I would pay that for a crankbait. Yeah, so that's definitely one of the more expensive square bill crankbaits on the market. That's one reason that I don't own any of those at this moment in time. Is that I do lose square bill crankbaits fairly often because I prefer to fish them aggressively, and so I would say 80% of the square bill crankbaits that I own are either Lucky Craft 1.5s or Strike King 1.5s. And that's because I've been able to find them for, they both retail at like $7 max. And I've been able to find them as cheap as $3. Yeah, I recently bought this. This is a Lucky Craft 1.5, but it's made from a different material, has different deflection properties, and I wish I even remembered what this is made of. Um, but I think a $20 ABS plastic 1.5 square bill, there's no way it's worth it. So I totally hear you, Daniel, and I don't own any don't own any of the S Crank 1.5s myself. So that's a good example of a megabass bait that is high quality but overpriced. Bruce says I'm lacking on chatterbaits and jerkbaits. I have a selection of some crazy colors that would be a struggle to catch with. Um, that's a reasonable assertion. Over time, you have to decide what color patterns work well in your bodies of water, because in this day and age, there are so many different color patterns that work well across the country, depending on the forage that you're trying to imitate, depending on the water clarity that you're working with. Um, whether you're working with something that's transparent or something that is uh, flashy or something that is bright or something that is subtle is all stuff that you really need to consider for what works for you. And just because somebody highly recommends it or say it works well in XYZ situation doesn't mean it's going to for you. So it's almost inevitable that we are all going to acquire stuff that doesn't work for us year in and year out. And so I hear you. And it's disappointing that you might have to offload some crankbaits and chatterbaits in order, or crankbaits and jerkbaits in order to get the right chatterbaits. But you never know. Bruce, hit me up. If you've got stuff that you're trying to offload that I might be interested in, I'd be willing to trade you. I've got chatterbaits galore. That's never going to change. I will always have more chatterbaits than I need simply because I am such a believer, and it comes all the way down to me making my own out of, say, the queen tackle switchblade, right? So taking an existing swim jig that is already on the market and adding a chatterbait blade to it. And I own 1,000,001 chatterbaits as it is, but I'm still kind of always looking for the next best thing, and trying new things when it comes to bladed jigs. So you never know. Hit me up. All right. Send me a direct message on Instagram or an email at hooksetsarethree18@gmail.com, and we can always talk. You're right, Ron. I'm addicted to lures. Um, Technically, we all are, but yeah, you're right. Matt says, best thing to buy secondhand is swim baits. You save a lot of money finding bigger baits uh, beside hype baits for cheap and sometimes barely even used when most small bait maker sites are sold out. That's a great point. I've noticed that too, even though I'm not heavy into that game myself. I know that a lot of people who are big into the swim bait game are the type who want to support the bait maker and are on the website like at the time of a drop. Sometimes they get lucky, sometimes they don't. But buying secondhand for that kind of stuff can be huge in terms of saving money and getting what you want. So that's a great point, Matt. Thank you for mentioning it. I was wondering, same thing, like, why didn't you just do another contract with Megabass? I found that weird. Yeah, I assume it had to do with money. That the Guggen squad or Guggen Bates rather was willing to pay him a lot more money than Megabass was. And who knows, maybe Megabass had a contract with Chris that had to do with discounts and or commissions. So they were saying, we'll offer you this heavy, steep discount on all of our products, and we will offer you this commission on products that you sell. But we're not going to give you stuff for free. And Guggen Squad did the opposite and said, we'll give you all this stuff for free and we will pay you X number of dollars to be with us as a sponsor. Forget the discount, forget the commissions. We will just pay you upfront and we will give you all this stuff. And to a pro angler, I'm sure that that's appealing, right? Um, it's like the difference between working with a low or no name sponsor who's only willing to pay you X number of dollars to work with them per year versus someone who's willing to pay your entry fees for a certain number of tournaments or the majority of the year. So I wouldn't be surprised if money was the main driver in that decision, but I don't know. Bruce says, I need to come up with a good medium heavy combo sooner or later. Yeah, you do, because that is probably going to be your most commonly used or your most important combo that you have overall. It's super important, something that you're going to use for like, I don't know, 50 or 60% of your presentations. And when you think about it, you might have 5 total combos and you're using them 10, 8, 8, 10, 10, and then literally almost 50% on that medium heavy. Uh, so super important to have a good medium heavy combo and got to get on that, dude. Daniel says, I wonder if he left them or if they dropped him. I think he left them, but I don't know that. That's just my perception on what happened and based on the way he's talking about it. Why would they drop him? Honestly, unless they were paying him too much money already. Let's just say they were paying him instead of giving him a discount and and offering him a potential upside. Let's say they were paying him X number of dollars per year, and then they realized that they could sign on 3 or 5 up and coming pros for the same price that they were already paying Chris Aldane. Maybe that's possible, but I don't know that that's the case, and I wouldn't assume so either. So, with a company like Megabass, you never know. Matt says, then you need to try the Depths Evoke because that baby doesn't even get stuck. You can just continue reeling over cover, and it just combs right over, and it's perfect for grass, unlike a couple others that I've used. Yeah, you've mentioned that bait a handful of times, and I definitely do need to try it. So thank you again for the reminder and the suggestion. You said you've only lost 2 the whole year that you've used them from April to November. Uh, and the second one wasn't even from a snag; it was from a striper that you caught that snapped your line. Okay, well, sweet, good to know, man. All right, Matt, you got to go. Have a great rest of your night. Thank you for hanging out tonight, man. I appreciate you. You don't need to keep doing moderator duty after you leave, but thank you very much, man. Bruce Nichols, you've seen stuff about the queen tackle switchblades. Okay, good. Yeah, it's an awesome little deal that you should be aware of because you can get them for cheap and you can convert virtually anything that is a vertical line tie into a bladed jig. And the cool thing is they make these in large and regular blades. So the regular blade is like a standard chatterbait in terms of blade of what we're working with size wise. We put these side by side for you to see. This is like the exact same size. This is the regular queen tackle switchblade. And then they make a large version that is this guy. That is definitely smaller than like the big blade chatterbait, but it's bigger than the regular queen tackle switchblade. So it's a nice in between size. And then here's the packaging and um, what these Bass Patrol swim jigs or football jigs look like. As you can see, mustad hooks. This is that rubber skirt. And I'm telling you, $3 a pop for these guys. So do check them out if you haven't already. Ron and Matt are out of here. It's 1:30 Eastern time. Guys, get out of here. I'm going to sign off here anyway in a minute. So thank you so much for hanging out. As long as you did, it's absolutely insane. And I had a really fun time talking to you guys. Um, hope you guys had a fun time as well. It's been fun. Bruce says paying a pro would be cheaper than advertising on TV or heavy traffic websites. You're absolutely right about that. Um, and so it all comes down to advertising dollars at the end of the day, end of the year, in terms of what you're working with, marketing budget, where you're going to spend that money, whether it's to sponsor a pro or pay for advertisements online or on TV. And you're right, sponsoring a pro for a portion of the season or for the whole season would be cheaper than paying for an advertisement online or on TV. And it's usually in your better interest to do so. Now, why they couldn't come to an agreement, or at least we're assuming they couldn't come to an agreement with Chris Aldane this year, I don't know. And maybe it has everything to do with the way that Guggenbaits approached him, if they did approach him as opposed to the other way around. You know, they've acquired a pretty good pro staff with Dustin Connell and Jacob Wheeler and Scott Martin, and they've got a really good a base in terms of pro anglers that are working with Guggenbaits. And so I'm sure that he can identify with those anglers, talk with them about the deals they've got going on, negotiate well on his end, and end up with something that he's really satisfied with. So again, that's just my opinion. I don't really know what happened here, and I wish him all the best. I hope he is doing the right thing for his family, for his fishing career, and maybe it's his opinion that he will catch as many fish on Guggenbaits as he would have on Megabass, or that he can fish Megabass in the background and either lie about it or not disclose what he's using or whatever. I don't know the situation. Um, so good on Chris Aldane for doing what he thinks is best for his family and his career. I would assume that he's got the right intentions in mind. The guy's been around the game for a long time, and and knows what he's doing. So I assume he's making the most amount of money and also giving himself the best chance to catch fish and perform best in tournament scenarios as he can. Whether that's through negotiating of contracts or the actual baits that he's using or a combination of both, I don't know. Bruce says, I have an extra heavy and a medium moderate and a spinning combo for Neds. After I unloaded some of leftover stuff, I'll start shopping again. Interesting. You're kind of jumping around there from extra heavy to medium moderate and a spinning combo. Wow. Uh, I mean, this is nitpicking, but personally, I would rather have a heavy power fast action, a medium heavy fast action, and a medium power fast action, whether it's a bait casting or a spinning combo. Uh, if I could only have three. Now, if I could go to a fourth, I would go medium light. That medium moderate is good for cranking, but that's about it. So that it's interesting that those are the only combos that you have. Alan, what's up, dude? How you doing? Daniel says that would suck if you had to use only baits that Googans make. Yeah, no, there's no way. There's absolutely no way that Chris or anybody else that is on their pro staff is agreeing to an exclusive sort of deal where literally they're only fishing with Guggen baits. I I know, and I can't say for a fact. I would like to say that boldly. I know for a fact, but I haven't talked to any of these guys. But there is 0% chance that any of those guys are fishing with exclusively Guggen bait stuff, um, no matter how much money they make. And Scott Martin could be the closest thing to an exception there because he is an investor slash partial owner in Guggen Baits. So he's not just a sponsored pro, but he actually is an owner of the company, and that's different. But that said, he still uses other stuff. It's not like Guggen Baits is all that he uses, but if you look at the other guys, they're sponsored by a number of other companies as well. But you would have to imagine that Guggen Baits is doing a good job to be competitive at paying these guys more than most other companies, and incentivizing them well to put the name out there. So I don't know that. Tim says Scott throws Vision 110s all day long. Of course he does. I'm sure that almost all of those guys do. And yeah, it's just the reality. Everybody uses stuff more than just Guggen if they're sponsored by Guggen. There's no way in your right mind you would sign a contract that says you will use nothing but Guggen squad baits. I mean, I don't care if Scott Martin talks about the uh, whatever they call it, their jerk bait. I wanted to call it the squad. It's not called that. I don't even know what it is. They do make jerk baits. I don't know. I picked up one, maybe two back in the day, and I never really used them. Um, I don't know what they're called. Daniel says I would not use Guggen rods too. If you boat flip a fish, your rod may break. Sure. That's a fair point to make. I don't know about that. I don't know exactly what their blinks are made of, but I don't know that I would use uh, their stuff uh, on the rod side of the equation. Isn't that Guggen Squad versus Guggen Baits? I think Guggen Baits is under the Ketchco umbrella, is invested in by Scott Martin, is a different type of company than Guggen Squad, which sells the rods, who are manufactured by I don't know who, but are decent rods, but probably overpriced for what they are. And no, I don't know that anybody uses Guggen Squad rods as pros. I don't know that anybody is sponsored by Guggen Squad rods. Extra heavy is a team lose with a lose super duty, says Bruce. Picked up with 2 American Hero combos for $200. Sold the American Hero same day for $140. Well, look at you just flipping and ripping, just getting good deals, selling for good prices, and figuring it out, man. No, don't get me wrong. I think you're doing well for yourself, and especially for getting into the game for a good price, like a remarkable price. Again, I'm embarrassed to even think about or to potentially admit what I've spent over the years on all of my fishing gear. And for you to say that you've spent as little as you have overall is remarkable. So, by no means am I hating on what you have or why. I just think, in theory, if you were to only have 3 combos, you should narrow it in closer to the middle as opposed to have a really heavy, a medium, moderate, and a spinning setup to be able to try and handle all of your needs. And that's just me, right? Tim says they throw what works and push what pays. Just the reality of tournament fishing at that level. You're right, Tim. Um, you know, they got to make their money, right? Tournament fishing does not make them enough money. They're not in it to make money. They're in it for the love of the game. And over time, marketing dollars have become kind of the name of the game. And so working with the right companies, negotiating the right contracts has become the deal. And so a lot of guys are working with companies that they don't believe in, or wouldn't ordinarily use because the price is right. Daniel says Catch Company designs the rods. I've seen more than one Guggen Squad people break their rods. Yeah, I believe that. Guys, I finally caught up on comments. There's 12 people in here, 23 thumbs up. If for some reason you haven't already hit that thumbs up, do me that favor real quick. We've been in here 2 hours and 44 minutes, and I am just now caught up on comments. Finally, I don't know if it's because 11 people are in here versus like 20, and everybody's been active in the comments, but I can't tell you how much I appreciate the conversation tonight. It's been super fun, and especially with me coming in with very little idea of what we would talk about. I tried to get Epic Eric on here after watching him on Debo's stream earlier tonight, and that was very last minute. So I was trying to plan for multiple streams, uh, different ideas, think about it. And so thank you guys so much. Fozy says, took all night, but finally caught up. You're right about that. And for that reason, I'm going to take the very last sip. Bruce says, first day at my brother's pond, I used the extra heavy with the Texas rig, caught 1 largemouth. Can only imagine how many bites I missed. LOL. Yeah, that's true. And that's why my channel name is Hooksets Are Free. Is literally anytime you are in doubt, anytime you think something is off, if something feels mushy, if you don't have contact with your bait anymore. If anything is suspicious, set the hook. Reel down and set the hook, because the worst comes to worst, you're going to ruin that cast and have to retrieve your bait and cast somewhere else. Give it some time and then go back to that spot. Um, Hook sets are free. Okay. I know the gear isn't free. Everybody loves to argue with my name. Fishing stuff isn't free, but hook sets are free. Once you're actually on the water fishing with what you have, uh, it's all just about being in tune with the situation, with the water, with the fish. And if you think you might have a bite, you might as well set the hook. So when you say you can't imagine how many fish, how many bites you might have missed, you're absolutely right. You might have missed a few or more than that. And so, uh, one thing that Debo does, I watched Debo earlier tonight. He keeps his finger on the line at all times, just to gain a little bit of sensitivity compared to, say, the rod, whatever the equipment is that he's using. Um, is keeping his finger on the line as opposed to just the blank of the rod. So keep that in mind. If ever you think you might have a bite, always set the hook just to be safe, because you wouldn't want to not set the hook and miss a fish than to set the hook and miss a fish. Um, I don't think ruining a cast is a big deal, but I think missing a bite is a big deal. Daniel says, I'm trying to decide between another Dobbins rod or trying one of the Aired X for that loose custom black. Um, that's a good question. I don't know. Aired X versus Dobbins. It depends on what model Dobbins you're looking at, right? Because I think price point is everything. I would expect, whether you're using a Dobbins Fury or Colt with this reel, that this reel is going to be what shines in the combo. Um, and so I don't think the rod matters quite as much. I might opt for the Aired X. Honestly, currently I have my new Aired X paired up with a Shimano Corrado, which is way more expensive than the rod itself. But the rod feels right. It's got a good action on it in terms of when I bend the rod. It feels right. I've got the 7.3 medium heavy, and I like it, especially for the price point. I'm excited to use it, but when thinking about a Dobbins, I don't know how marginally better the quality is going to be. I So earlier I almost answered this question, and I do think that in general, reel matters a little bit more than rod. I know that a lot of people would disagree with that and say that once you find the right reel, it's all about honing in the right rod, and that theoretically a more sensitive and higher quality rod makes all the difference compared to a reel. And in general, I agree with that, but I think you have to be at a certain level in terms of ability and what you can do with a fishing rod, how much experience you have, to be able to notice those really subtle differences in weight and in action for a rod to make the difference. I think with reel, when you are a everyday angler, you can really tell the difference in a reel. And with rod, you can tell, but not the super fine intricacies. And so if we're talking about the difference between a $50 and $100 rod, it's minor. If we're talking about a $50 and an $80 rod, it's next to nothing. If we're talking about a $100 and $200 rod, it might be significant. So it's all relative. Bruce says, one thing I noticed no one seems to mention, casting after setting a hook. What? The first bird's nest was evil. I launched Sexy Dog across the pond when the line snapped. Okay, so my assumption is that what you did was you set the hook, caught a fish, let it go. You had a Sexy Dog, a topwater walking bait on, and you cast that thing. Next cast, you snapped it right off, and it went flying across the pond. Is that right? You were using braid to a leader. That would be my assumption. That certainly can be an issue. If you've got your drag set a little too tight, if you're using a lure that is a little too heavy for the rating of the rod, or a little too heavy for the braid that you're using, those are certainly issues that you can come into. So it doesn't matter what knot you're using, Bruce. It all has to do with what you've been doing recently. So if you've challenged that drag, if you're using a lure that is too heavy for the rating of the rod, or close to it, if you're using a lure that is heavy relative to the pound test of the braid that you're using, that makes a huge difference. What weight of lure were you using? If you're saying you're using a 55-pound braid with an extra heavy rod, that sounds pretty extreme. What weight and what lure were you using? A Sexy Dog. It sounds like you were overpowering the lure in the first place if you're using a topwater walking bait that's less than an ounce on 55-pound braid to a leader, and you're walking that thing. You set the hook, you bring it in, and then you cast it. My only guess is that you've got the spool tension knob set too loose, so it let too much line out too quickly, and wherever it had dug into the spool, however far out you had cast the lure and set the hook initially, is where it caught and snapped right away. But yeah, I mean that kind of thing will happen from time to time, and it's upsetting. I get it. You will experience that over time, but what you'll have to do is after an aggressive fight like that is make short casts little by little, and then work your way out, realizing that the line is good to go, instead of just catching a fish and then bombing that thing out there only to realize that it backlashes and flings off. And that does happen from time to time. But if it does, and it's top water lure, you do what you can to grab another rod or reel and catch that lure that's floating on the surface with another lure that ideally you can cast further than that. So Tim says, I've never used a custom black, but the Dobbins rods have been great to me for years. From the Fury to the Champions Extremes, they're awesome. Yeah, I like the Dobbins Fury a lot. I don't have the Champions, but I have the custom black reel and the rods, and I like them a lot. I've only had them a couple seasons, so I've got two combos. One that is more of a do everything, and one that is more of a jerkbait setup specifically. And then I've got an extra reel here that is up for sale that I'm gonna probably sell to Daniel. And I really, really like them. They're heavy duty. They've got a lot of drag to them. They've got a wide handle that's, I don't know, 105 to maybe 110 millimeters. Uh, they're built really well. They've got wind grips on them. They've got clicking drag or spool tension, clicking drag. And super smooth function to them. I have just fallen in love with these reels since using them over the last couple of seasons. And I yeah, I like them a lot. They've also got the label on the side of them that is just a little bit of an extra feature that allows you to label what type of line and what gauge. Good Lord. Why won't that focus? It allows you to distinguish whether you're using braid or main line and what diameter of line. That only focused for you guys for like 1 second, and I apologize for that. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, but that is not wanting to focus for you guys. Oh, I had it there for like a split second. It's not going to come back. There it is. Kind of. In and out, in and out. That's just one little feature, but it's got adjustable brakes on the outside that go all the way from minimum to 10. And then, just like all Lewis reels, you can pull this guy here, lift the side plate, take it off, and adjust the brakes there as well. And yeah, really, really nice reel. I think it's worth everything of, I don't know, 150, 170, 180 bucks. Brand new in the package. Of course, I am not going to charge Daniel that much for it, but really, really nice reel. I've got 3 of them, and 2 of them I use on a really regular basis, and am a big fan of. I'm way behind on comments, and I apologize for that. Alan says I use straight braid on walking baits. I have before, but I usually don't. I throw a mono leader on most of them, simply because I don't want the line to get tangled up. Um, and I find that in using a walking bait, a monofilament leader is going to stay a lot more rigid and move with the bait, whereas braid is going to want to get tangled up more likely, more frequently. And so, just something to consider. Here's a megabass bait that is expensive, but in my opinion, worth it, and that's the Dog X Diamante. And Tim, you're right. Dobbins rods depend on your budget for sure, because they carry everything from entry level to super high end. So you're absolutely right about that. And Fozy is right. Keep practicing and trying uh, to not cast as hard. That's a huge deal. Tim says I'm a big fan of wind grips that just feel right to me. Yeah, no, they feel good to me too. Although I am a fan of a lot of different types of grips. I really like the wind grips that come on loose reels. Um, but that said, I also surprisingly am a fan of EVA foam grips that come on Quantum and on some Abu Garcia. Like this is the Roxani. Um, I'm a big fan of this reel, but haven't used it a lot because I'm a righty. Um, whereas, say the Luz reels and some Abu Garcia reels come with these rubber straight reel handles that I am not a big fan of. Okay, and so I will go out of my way to buy these grips from Bass Pro and Cabela's and put them on the reel handles themselves. It only literally takes a second to put them on, and all of a sudden, you've got a decent grip on them. So, like, this is the super cheap Lose Classic Pro, which is I don't know, $59, $60 reel. It's almost too grippy that without a rod on there, I'm like throwing it out of my hand. Uh, Now this reel does feel a little bit cheaper, especially than these others that I've been talking about. That feel quite a bit more refined and lower profile in the hand, have better drag and everything in between. But um, all of that kind of thing matters. All of those things matter. Bruce says everyone that has an Air to X seems to like them. Well, I hope the same is true for me. I will keep you guys posted on that in the next couple of months because, as I said, I just picked it up recently, and have not yet tried it. So I don't know. And Bruce, you're right. Wind grips are pricey as hell for what they are, but you're better off buying a reel that has wind grips on them than to buy them on the secondary market. To buy them as a an add-on to your existing reels does not make sense to spend 40 or 50 bucks or whatever it costs to add wind grips to your existing reel. I would not do that. These reel grips from Cabela's were like, I don't know, $5. There's no real need to spend the extra price tag to actually replace the knobs that you would with a wind grip. But if you're buying a reel that comes with wind grips on them, knobs on them, then absolutely go for it. And Bruce, a 12-pound fluoro leader on your top waters, if that's what you're talking about, that's a little bit light, and I don't know about the fluoro leader. I often throw a 17 or 20-pound mono leader on my top waters, and so I don't quite know what to say about that. Tim says that Diamante is somewhat of a finesse walking bait, in my opinion. Love that thing, but I was surprised when I first started throwing them. Just doesn't vary as much side to side as I thought it would. And honestly, that is the reason that I've opted for this silent version. I've picked up two of these in the last year. Really, two in the last few months. I got them both during Black Friday. and both in the silent version, because originally I had the rattling version and did not like it all that much. I like the action of it just fine, but I do think it's a little bit subtle. So I think that uh, for a walking bait like that, something that is silent could make all the difference. So that's a good point that you make there, and the reason that I picked up a couple in the silent version when I only had one or two in the rattling version to start out with altogether. Tim says, I wouldn't use fluoro for top water because it sinks, but then again, there's no right or wrong. You're right about that. Um, I have done so only when I had to. If I had a mono and a fluoro um, leader material to use for top waters, I would almost always choose mono. Unless, let's say, I'm using a top water walking bait that I want to go barely subsurface, if I want it to make more commotion than to walk on the surface, if I want it to dip or bloop a little bit more, I might use a short 4, 6, maybe as much as 10 or 12-inch fluorocarbon leader. But otherwise, I'm using mono almost all the time on a top water bait. And you're absolutely right about that. Mm, Bruce says, I'll try 17-pound mono. I have a 1,000-yard spool sitting here. That's a big spool. And yeah, you should. 17-pound mono is a good option for sure. Straight braid, I don't know about that, Tim. Back to mono for most topwater baits, other than a frog. I don't know. I throw braid to mono a lot when it comes to topwater. Uh, just because I find that I can get much better casting distance uh, than with straight mono. And that's in almost every single situation. Have I heard about the 6 cents? Have I heard about 6 cents going to be dropping spinner baits soon? Um, I've heard about it, but I haven't seen them. So no, I don't know much about them. Um, 6 Cents is a company that over the last handful of years has done a really good job of releasing a handful of new baits per year, and I really admire that. Whereas like Guggen Baits, for example, is trying to release a ton of new baits every year and cover all of their bases over a couple of years. Whereas 6 Cents has taken their time and really done their research and shows that they know what they're doing. So no, I haven't seen their spinner baits. Of course, I've seen their newer baits like their blade baits and things like that, and I'm really looking forward to their downsized flat side, their Crush Flat 55X. I think it's what it's going to be called, but I haven't seen their spinner bait. Um, all right, dudes. There's 7 of you guys in here. We've been on for over 3 hours. I'm out of here. I've had 2 bourbons. I've had 2 pee breaks. We've talked about most things under the sun, and I super appreciate you guys. We got 23 thumbs up. If for whatever reason you are one of these 8 people in here, have not hit the thumbs up button already, do me that solid. And if for some reason you're not subscribed to the channel, also do that for me, please. I would really appreciate it. We're a relatively small channel here on YouTube at just over 3,000 subscribers. And we always have good conversation every time we hop on here and hang out, whether it's a dedicated conversation of which I've planned out well in advance, have a number of different topics, specific baits and or other things that I want to talk about, or just let you guys kind of guide the conversation as we did tonight. And I couldn't even keep up with you guys. I mean, we didn't even have 20 people in here at any given time, and yet you guys were just popping off. And I really appreciate that. So Thank you guys so much for your time, your support. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend. And I will hope to see you guys again in the next week or so. But have a good one. Thank you guys.